the walls just fell apart and the roof just caved in, and so much of the contents were shorn from their moorings and went flying around and were found on the highway or in the ditch.
At the time of the crash, Carol was driving, and Peter was in the back, returning to the front seat.
I heard her half scream, "Oh my God," and before I could get braced, before I could tell what was happening, I heard impact, and that's all I remember until just a few minutes later, I guess, and I woke up, and the next thing I remember, somebody was yelling fire, and I was thinking, oh great, now we're going to get roasted alive.
Miraculously, Peter survived with relatively minor injuries, but Carol came perilously close to dying. She suffered serious internal injuries and numerous broken bones. She's just learning to walk again. The Rosinski crash was reviewed by Dr. William Mulligan, trauma surgeon and head of Transport Canada's accident investigation team in Winnipeg. He took me to a wrecking yard to show me that recreational vehicles like the Rosinskis are often built with wooden, not steel frames.
Well, this vehicle is characteristic to a certain extent of many of the recreational vehicles that were built at that time. It shows a relatively fragile superstructure, a lot of wood construction.
What happened to the Rosinski's motorhome once it was struck?
Right. The bottom of the vehicle stopped, and the top of the vehicle, of course, kept going and simply sheared the top off.
Now, Mr. Rosinski told me that they felt that they survived that accident because they were driving in a fairly large motorhome. Is he right?
Well, what he's referring to, of course, is the mass ratio benefits. Unquestionably, the 10,000-pound vehicle striking a 5,000-pound car gives an added advantage to the occupants of the vehicle. And in this case, what he says has merit.
Dr. Mulligan pointed out that although the weight and height of an RV is an advantage in an accident, structural integrity is also critical to safety. There are no government regulations requiring steel frames for the living compartments of recreational vehicles. Therefore, many motorhomes and trailers use wood and sheet metal to support much of their structure. It makes them cheaper and lighter. It also makes them disintegrate easily in a crash. But collision strength is only one problem with RVs. There is also the risk of fire. In September of 1985, the Robichaud family of New Orleans were driving with their family in a motorhome over a bridge outside the city when their gasoline tank simply fell off and struck the ground. It exploded into flames.
With motorhomes, there are many flammability hazards. The tanks can sometimes be mounted exterior of the frame so that in a crash, you will rupture the tank. The tanks themselves can drop to the ground and be set off. And then finally, the material that's used in the home is very flammable, can flash over just like houses do, and there aren't enough exits so that someone who's in the back of a motorhome can get out quickly.
Tragically, Charles Robichaud and his wife Elise found out just how flammable a motorhome can be. These pictures were taken by a news crew that just happened to be on the bridge. Witnesses on the scene couldn't believe what they saw.
All I know is it went up so damn fast. It might have been 1 minute from the time I saw the fire come out the bottom of it until it was completely engulfed. Maybe a minute.
Their motorhome, 1979 Swinger made by Georgie Boy, had only one door. That was on the right-hand side of the vehicle where the fire was at its worst. The Robichauds were forced to run through the flames burning outside the door to escape. Charles Robichaud made it out of the motorhome. Much of his clothing was melted away. He suffered burns to 30% of his body, but survived. His wife, however, died almost a month later from the burns. Mrs. Robichaud's brother and sister-in-law were also killed. Jeanette Arnona is the Robichaud's daughter. She hired lawyer Robert Smolke to investigate. They settled out of court with the manufacturers of the motorhome for just over $1 million.
It was not just an accident. It could have been prevented. We were later to find out that there were defects in the gas tank. And that's exactly what happened to the gas tank. It fell off. And I don't think anybody would realize that a gas tank can fall off of any vehicle.
The law firm's investigation revealed that the gasoline tank in the motorhome had been moved during manufacturing. and that as a result, the metal strap supporting the tank was subjected to undue stress and ultimately broke.
The flammability of this thing was just, to me, was prohibitive. You know, a person ought to have longer than a minute to pull his vehicle over the side of the road and exit it without having any injury. But the main problem in this vehicle is it had one exit. Had there been two exits up at the front for the driver and the right front passenger, those people would have escaped from this vehicle unharmed.
One of the biggest problems in RVs, according to the Center for Auto Safety report, is the risk of propane explosions. Most of the appliances in an RV are fueled by propane, which in the event of a leak can fill the vehicle with explosive gas. Propane gas is heavier than air and doesn't dissipate easily. One spark and the whole vehicle can go up in flames. The Center for Auto Safety wants all RVs to be equipped with propane alarms that ring when there's a leak, as well as carbon monoxide alarms. Clarence Didlow pointed out that many RVs are built with a lot of wood paneling and polyurethane insulation, which are extremely flammable. Although second exits are mandatory, the exit can be through a window. Neither the Canadian nor American governments keep accurate records of recreational vehicle accidents. A detailed study of RVs was done at the University of Kentucky at the request of the U.S. government in the 1970s. Although that study was based on a limited sample, it found that recreational vehicles have twice the risk of accidents and 8 times the rate of fires and accidents as ordinary vehicles.
We think that the first line of defense in an occupant is having a seatbelt on. And
Robin Myers is Chief of Standards for the Road Safety Division of Transport Canada. His department strongly advocates the wearing of seatbelts in RVs and other vehicles. However, in Canada, full-size motorhomes, those over 10,000 pounds, are not required to have shoulder belts in the front seats, although smaller RVs are.
Why aren't there more stringent regulations about how these vehicles are built? Why aren't they reinforced with steel around the body? Why don't they have the same kinds of safety engineered in as cars have?
according to our information, the vehicles, the accident performance of the vehicles is as good as or superior based on overall accident statistics. And we don't like using these because we're concerned about every accident. The vehicles are behaving as a population as well as other vehicles.
But the only report we can find, it was put together by a Kentucky group, says that, statistically, RVs have twice the number of accidents as all other types of vehicles and 8 times the number of fires. Isn't that in itself enough information to spur you on to change the regulations?
It's cause for concern, and we'll try and get a hold of that report and look into it in more detail. Any information we can get a hold of causes us to look critically at the performance of any of these vehicles.
It's just about impossible to provide a vehicle that is going to completely protect every occupant. I suppose if we built it of 1-inch steel plate and we never drove it anywhere, it would be safe.
Norm Smith is president of the Canadian Recreational Vehicles Association.
Why wouldn't you, as a group, say, if Transport Canada isn't concerned with safety in the passenger compartment, let's do it ourselves. Let's put in shoulder belts. Let's put in propane sniffers. All sorts of things that could protect the occupants of not only the basic vehicle, but the cabin in which they live.
We obviously are caught between keeping the product in a price range that is affordable to the consumer and also provide for his safety and for his needs. And there really hasn't been a need indicated to make any dramatic changes along those lines. If there is, then we'll certainly respond to that.
In Canada, the Road Safety Branch of Transport Canada claims and told me that they feel they are doing enough to keep people safe in motorhomes on the road.
They're not doing enough. And the RV industry itself has not put safety on a high enough level.
Well, they're in business to make money, and I understand that. But I think that they have to have a sense of responsibility along with that. And I think when they put motorhomes together in a fashion where a family, they know a family will be more or less living in it, then I think they should take more precautions.
If you own an RV or are thinking of buying one, ask the manufacturer about the construction. Does it have a steel frame? Make sure your RV has a propane alarm, a carbon monoxide alarm, and a smoke detector. Make sure all seats have seat belts with shoulder harnesses. Check the fuel tanks. Make sure they're mounted inside the frame. And make sure you have an RV with more than one door to allow quick and easy exit. And be aware that tow trailers have particularly high accident rates because of their special handling problems.
Coming up next, the latest in consumer trends and products on Market Watch. Do you have a hard time hanging on to your small change? Well, an Ottawa inventor has discovered a new way to make sure your hard-earned cash sticks to you. Phil Sarrazin calls himself an absent-minded inventor, and he's the kind of guy who's always losing the small change from his pants pocket. But since the government came out with a $1 coin, small change isn't so small anymore.
When the Canadian government came out with this new dollar, I cursed them because I lose, money all the time. And for me, a quarter, well, that's a problem. But to lose $1, that's a serious setback. And all of a sudden it dawned on me, well, maybe I can come up with a different technique to hold them.
Last August, Phil came up with a solution, a magnetic wallet to keep those elusive coins where they belong. He took his invention to a leather goods manufacturer in Niagara Falls, who also liked the idea. Using top-quality leather and magnetized fabric from the U.S., the company started to make Phil's wallet. Production was in full swing by the end of November, and the first batch of wallets hit the market last month. So if you want to hang on to your dimes and dollars, you can get your magnetic wallet at leather specialty stores for about $35. The older we get, the harder it is to perform basic day-to-day chores, like gripping small household objects with arthritic hands, or bending to pick things up off the floor. Here's a store full of new products that can make life easier for seniors. Magnifying glasses and large-face playing cards are popular items in Erica Wayburn's brand new store for seniors. The oversized numbers on this telephone are easier to see when you're dialing, and this reacher can save you a pain in the back. The magnetic tip works for small metal objects like pins and needles and coins. A simple converter lets you flick this lamp on and off without wrestling with the switch, and Wayburn stocks other clever items for failing fingers as well.
This is a pen with a foam ball around it, and it's used by people who have arthritis or who have gripping problems or shaky hands because of Parkinson's or MS. They can rest it, or they can grip it however firmly they need to so they can write better. And here we have cutlery that serves sort of the same purpose. It has rings here that people can actually fit their fingers into. They're adaptable. And it has a fairly wide handle, so it just helps with gripping problems in general.
Products like these can be found in other stores, but few shops gather such a wide variety of useful gadgets under one roof. So Wayburn plans to start a mail-order business from her Toronto office later this year. Attention, all you downhill skiers. A French-made ski binding has been recalled. Owners of Look brand 3D alpine ski bindings are warned that the tension screw on the toe piece loosens up on its own. For more information, call Norvinka Incorporated. Their toll-free number in BC and Alberta is 1-800-663-0606. In the rest of Canada, call 1-800-361-6212. Norvinka is the Canadian distributor for the bindings, and they'll replace faulty bindings for free. And here's more bad news for cigarette smokers. A Canadian doctor says drivers who smoke are 50% more likely to cause an accident than non-smoking drivers. Dr. Rob Bryson of Queen's University isn't sure why, but his survey of more than 1,000 drivers shows that drivers who smoke are a bad risk. Carbon monoxide from the burning tobacco may impair a driver's vision and reaction time, or it could simply be that smoking distracts the driver's attention. And that's Market Watch for this week.
Coming up, Marketplace reporter Irene Bekaric with a story about a potentially deadly combination: fast foods and allergies.
It's cheap and convenient. Fast food has become part of the North American culture.
It's a huge industry. Every year in Canada and the U.S., people spend more than $50 billion on fast food. There are questions about how nutritious these foods are. People want to know about fat and sodium content, carbohydrates and calories. But there are those who are more concerned about complete lists of ingredients. They want to know exactly what they're eating, because they know even the most common ingredients can kill.
He just died. And he was 17 years old, and he shouldn't have had to die for something that he ate.
Christian Taylor was an active teenager who spent most of his time doing community work. Christian had a severe allergy to nuts, and he was always extremely careful about what he ate. But one night last summer, he let down his guard. It was June 23rd. Christian and some friends stopped for a bite at this RVs in Burlington, Ontario. Christian liked apple turnovers. He'd had them at other fast food restaurants without any problems. But this time, a friend ordered for him, and Christian didn't notice the menu here said the turnovers were made with hazelnuts. Less than an hour later, Christian Taylor was dead.
Nobody should have to pay that price for one small mistake. Least of all, a 17-year-old kid who loves life and is full of potential and he had everything to give, and he was willing to give it. And there are lots of teenagers like that, but my son was very special.
Christian Taylor is not an isolated case. Every month in Canada, someone dies because of something they ate. About 2 million Canadians, most of them children, suffer from adverse reactions to foods.
Are those the ones I photographed?
Mm-hmm. Dr. Jerry Dolovich is an allergist at McMaster University. He says people become allergic to foods when their body's immune system goes into overdrive. It starts to produce antibodies against harmless substances. Dr. Dolovich says people can be allergic to any foods. The most common are shellfish, peanuts, eggs, milk, and nuts. Even trace amounts can trigger a reaction.
Mild reaction can be nothing more than stomach pains or a bit of hives and swelling. If a person is violently allergic and has exposure to sufficient food, it can be a so-called anaphylactic or generalized allergic reaction, and then there can be a fall in blood pressure, difficulty breathing, swelling, and even collapse and death.
Dr. Dolovich says ingredient labeling is crucial to people with food allergies, and he says labeling in grocery stores is not enough.
The people who are affected can't tell what's in the foods unless it's stated on the label. I think that for fast foods, there should be labeling. I believe it is necessary that there be labeling which states all the components, and that labeling should be a legal requirement.
Betty Lou Taylor is also asking for legislation. Ever since her son Christian died, she's been writing to politicians and to the Canadian Medical Association. She's still waiting for replies.
I don't want my son's good name and his wonderful memory to be tarnished in any way by any kind of a lawsuit. If we could do something, and I think legislation is a good way, to save even one life, and I'm sure that we would save many, many more. I think it would be doing something positive in my son's memory.
Susan Daglish is the executive director of the Allergy Information Association. That's the consumer group that was successful in getting mandatory labeling in grocery stores and on clothing. The association is now working on labeling for medication, and its newest target is the fast food industry.
It would be very easy to label foods in fast food restaurants because every food comes in a package. There aren't that many things on the menu, and the things that are on the menu don't have that many ingredients. And if they did label, then people who were at risk could go in and could eat safely and enjoy a pleasant meal.
In response to Daglish's campaign, the Canadian Restaurant and Food Services Association has started to educate its members about the problems of food allergies. The executive vice president, Douglas Needham, says the association is urging its members to respond responsibly, but is opposed to ingredient labeling on packages.
We feel that it's very impractical. For one thing, that packages and containers are used for many different products, such as a soft drink container, which can have many different types of soft drinks. We believe that it's very dangerous because you're relying on staff to put the right product in the right packaging. And we feel that time-wise, the information is getting to the consumer at an incorrect time, that he has already made a purchase decision. before he sees the ingredients. We're supporting pamphlets that are available on request by consumers or toll-free lines to the head office.
If they wanted to try that, it wouldn't be bad if they listed all the ingredients that were in the products, if they kept the lists updated, if they let the customer know that these were available to them, and if they told the customer when they changed the brochure so that the customer could discard the old brochure. And it seems to me if they're going to go to all that trouble, wouldn't it be really simpler just to put it on the package?
In 1985, when a little girl was rushed to hospital because of an allergic reaction to nuts, some RVs outlets in Ontario, including this one in Burlington, changed their menus to say their apple turnovers were made with hazelnuts. Last week, in response to Christian Taylor's death, RVs stopped selling apple turnovers. They won't be back on the menu until early March, when RV's suppliers starts making them without nuts. In the meantime, Arby's says it has no plans to list ingredients on packages or to print brochures that would be available on request. If people want information, they have to write or call the main office. At Burger King, they say the same thing. So do the people at Dairy Queen. Kentucky Fried Chicken also has no plans for labels or brochures, but it has provided each outlet with an allergy chart to inform the staff. McDonald's says it's not going to label packages either. It is, however, printing a brochure that'll be available on request sometime in the spring. Wendy's is also drafting a brochure that'll be out in March. In the meantime, it's handing out allergy charts. The charts show which foods contain 9 ingredients people are most likely to be allergic to. 2 other companies, Pizza Hut and Mr. Submarine, say they're considering the possibility of brochures. The Allergy Information Association still wants labels. It's conducting its own survey, and Susan Daglish is disappointed by the response.
I really feel that legislation is the answer because I don't think that the restaurants will do it voluntarily.
I know it's up to the person with the allergy to be responsible and to look after themselves, but I think also we have to realize that if you let your guard down just once, you shouldn't have to pay that price.
For more information about food allergies and what to do in an emergency, send a self-addressed stamped envelope to the Allergy Information Association, 25 Pointer Drive, Suite 7, Western Ontario, M9R1K8. That's the Allergy Information Association, 25 Pointer Drive, Suite 7, Western Ontario, M9R1K8.
We enjoy getting your letters. Many of you have written with questions about food additives. Mrs. Winifred McCartney of Valcartier, Quebec, has this inquiry. So many recipes call for grated orange peelings, but I'd heard that some oranges are dyed. I used to make my own marmalade, but hesitate to do so now. What oranges are safe? We could find information only about North American oranges. So if you use orange rinds for cooking and baking, use California oranges. They are a natural color all year. Florida oranges are usually dyed from October to December to cover green blotches. While Florida oranges are safe to eat, the peels or rinds should not be used in cooking.
And we have a question about baby formula from Mrs. Annick Stark of Lethbridge, Alberta. Can leftover baby formula be used again? Often our baby will just take a little bit of a full bottle. Is there any problem reusing this formula later? The answer, Mrs. Stark, is that baby formula should never be reused or reheated because it'll cause the growth of bacteria. So make only small amounts of formula at a time. Once the formula is opened, it'll last about 24 hours in the refrigerator.
That's our program for tonight. Next week on Marketplace, aluminum in our diet. Aluminum is an additive that's found its way into a wide variety of our foods and drugs. But recent scientific evidence shows aluminum may be dangerous to our health.
Some people who do take in too much aluminum are likely to suffer from both bone disease and brain disease from their exposure to it.
That's next week on Marketplace.
Stay tuned now for Man Alive. Good night. See you next week.
Join us next Tuesday. Bye for now.
Her name is Anna Callahan, a gypsy moth from the philosophy department. Seems to have stolen his heart. Sheila McCarthy stars in A Nest of Singing Birds Sunday. This is CBC Television.
Ford Tempo and Mercury Topaz introduce Car Talk. That's Car Talk for sleek, all-new aerodynamic styling. That's Car Talk for quality. That's Car Talk for electronic fuel-injected performance. That's Car Talk for air conditioning. That's Car Talk for AM/FM electronic stereo. You get all this for just this. And that's Car Talk for value, which makes Tempo and Topaz our best sellers.
From the East Coast or the West Coast, from Toronto or Newry, we can fly you to more destinations in Canada than any other airline. We've created the most extensive network this country has ever seen. Together with our partners, we offer you over 900 well-timed departures every business day. Because we have a name to live up to.
Make sure all...
Each year, the service technicians at Goodyear Certified Auto Service Centers go back to school. They're always learning, always upgrading their skills. Which means for our people, school's never out. That's another commitment we're making to you to keep your car serviced right. Every time. Nobody else does it like Goodyear. At Goodyear Certified Auto Service Centers, you know it's right.
The united difference? As a salesman, I see it as service. I'm trained to go into your home and measure accurately, offer suggestions, and arrange installation. I assume responsibilities often left to the customer, and I do them for no extra charge. That's how I contribute to the united difference, a difference that starts with volume buying to ensure the lowest price and ends with service.
United Carpet. Over 35 stores united for service and savings. Discover the united difference today.
Upstairs, Downstairs, 9:30 Sunday mornings on CBC Television.